Assalamu alaikum. I'm Abdul.
And I'm Mariam. Welcome to the Muhsinaire podcast.
All right, so Muhsinaire is from Muhsin and Millionaire. It's about our journey towards becoming people who live with ihsan and build wealth in faith, family, and impact. Welcome to another episode of the Muhsinaire podcast. Today we have our first guest of the podcast. We hope to invite many more, inshallah, in the future so we can share their amazing stories and how we think they help shine a path towards becoming a Muhsinaire. Our guest today is Dr. Bilal Bugaje. This will be a three-part episode where we will explore faith, family, and impact. So today we'll be talking about faith. So Bilal is a doctor of sustainable energy technology. He did his PhD in sustainable energy technologies. He's been a friend since childhood. Since childhood, he's my best friend, I think, in fact. My other best friend will not be listening to this podcast, so it's okay. Bilal is also a father of two girls, and they are a homeschooling family. And inshallah, they'll be my daughters-in-law one day. I think I see how my boys look at them, so maybe one day they'll be family too. So Bilal is someone I deeply respect, and we've been friends for a long time, and I've learned a lot from him. And I also see just a lot of elements of the Muhsinaire ethos in his journey and his family and his life. So thought it would be a good conversation to have and see how it turns out. So welcome to the podcast, Bilal.
Welcome. So, what do I call you on this podcast? I think
Oh my goodness.
I
No, okay.
I
Yeah,
need
yeah,
to,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Just call me Abdul.
so that I
Yes,
don't,
call
Abdul,
call me
okay, yes.
call me Abdul. And I'm pretty sure this, let's see how that's gonna play out because I don't think you
Yes,
can go the
yes.
whole podcast just calling me
Mm-hmm.
Abdul. So
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah.
see. All
So
right.
I'll try.
Okay. So we'll do a quick icebreaker first before we jump in. So I have two questions for you. The first one, what's a book or a movie or a documentary or something you've read or listened to recently that made you think differently that you would like to share?
Um, I thought about it. I haven't read a book in a while. Yeah, I think it would come up as we go.
Okay.
I've probably been listening to more podcasts recently.
Yeah,
So
that's also fine.
books,
If there's
yeah,
one that made you, reflect a
I
little bit,
think differently.
you can share. But it's okay. We can
Mm.
come back to this.
Yeah. It will probably come back, yeah, as the
Okay.
conversation goes.
Okay. Second question is, what is something that your kids have taught you recently?
Aha. Yeah, no, that's a good one. Or rather, I have something more recent in my head.
Mhm.
I, you know, I think it's important to clarify two ways my kids have teach me. So there's one where I learn from them, and there's a situation where they actually teach me. So usually you learn from them, and as a parent, you're supposed to constantly be learning, improving yourself, and seeing yourself in your children as a reflection of yourself, and you improve on yourself, and it's a lot of reflection, and it's a mirror. Your children are a good mirror for you. But in this case, I actually learned something. So recently, my first daughter said, told me about something that I knew I needed to check it up. I knew, but it's not that important. But I've always wanted to look into it because it didn't quite add up. It's about the name Atik. So I have a brother named Atik, and when my parents explained the name, they always use the title of the Kaaba, which is also Beit al-Atiq, the ancient house, or yeah, I think the ancient house is a good translation. So I don't there are some things it hasn't quite added to me for me in a sense that there were still some gaps. And also apparently there's a title of the prophet That's Muhammad Atiq. So my brother is actually a Muhammad Atiq. But I still don't know if that is the full explanation, because just as we have names like Umar Farouk and Ahmad Rufai in history, and you see people bearing both names, there's something about Atiku Abu Bakr or Abu Bakr Atiku, which you see in names around here, at least in Nigeria. We even had a vice president who was Abu Bakr Atiku, even though I think his is actually a surname. There are two names there. So this is just a long way of saying, talking about how my daughter clarified it for me. She was listening to either a podcast on the Sira, or she was reading a book on podcast, oh, sorry, a book on the Sira, or her mom read to her the Sira. And she usually comes up with these trivia that sometimes challenges things that I've taken for granted about the Sira. And this time round, she asked me, why did uh why did Abu Bakr's father, Abu Bakr Sadiq, why did he call Abu Bakr Atiq? That's not his name. And I was like, what? What do you mean he called him Atiq? He said, no, he called him Atiq. And I said, how did he call him Atiq? He said, when the father confronted Abu Bakr about his conversion to Islam, he called him Atiq. And I said, are you sure? And she was quite confident, without second guessing herself. So she took me back to the recording. So it's now it's coming back. It's either a podcast or an audio book. And she took me to the place where Abu Bakr's father actually called him by Atiq. And he called Abu Bakr by Atiq in a way that it is a nickname. It seems he doesn't call Abu Bakr by Abu Bakr, or, I mean, obviously Abu Bakr and Siddiq are all nicknames. So he called him by Atiq, and it all just made sense. And yeah, so it's something I haven't gone further to verify, apart from maybe one or two Google searches, but it does make sense. And I think this is one situation where my 6-year-old just taught me. I mean, almost 7 years old now.
Okay,
But
mashallah.
she literally taught me this. And this is not the only situation she's done that in the Sierra, but just
Mm,
to keep it brief, there's a moment she actually highlighted an inconsistency. So when you have the sources of the Sierra,
mhm,
there might be or narrations we have of the Sirah. Sometimes there are multiple narrations of the same event with the different details. So how those details are recorded, she actually highlighted some of those contradictions to me, because she read, she had in an audio book one little detail about the son of Abu Lahab, and then in while she was being read to, at the time she must have been like 5, so she didn't know how to read at the time. She was being read to, and then she pointed out to her mom that no, that's not what happened, because it was a different son to whom it happened. I was like, who even cares about the sons of Abu Lahab? But yeah, kids can be perceptive that way.
oh,
Yeah.
mashallah. Yeah, no, she's may Allah preserve them. That's great.
Mhm.
That reminds me actually, Sound of Sierra. I think they've released new episodes,
Yes.
so that's a
Oh,
podcast.
nice.
Yeah, for our listeners, if you don't know, that's a podcast where they basically reenact the Sira, where you have voice actors, different voice actors, for different characters, and it really takes on a whole new life. Of course, they're speaking English, and it's kind of American-ish, but it's still very good. I think it helps you kind of be able to really distinguish the characters and their traits. For me, I think the standout was Khadija radiallahu anha. The
Oh,
voice
yeah.
actress for that one, she did amazing, honestly. Like, I mean, I have a special bias towards
Mm.
Khadija. Anyway, like my daughter was almost named Khadija. Let's put it that way.
Well,
So
she
yeah.
can also be named Khadija. She can have
Well,
two
tell
names,
that
right?
tell that to
So
Mariam. Tell that to Mariam. She Mariam fought really hard that she must only have a first name and a surname. She cannot have a third name. So I was like, okay. Yeah. Okay, mashallah. All right. That's amazing. And I didn't hear your reaction to my, what do we call it, a proposal. But yeah,
Oh,
we
oh
need
no, we've had that discussion,
yes.
and I can't have it any. I mean, I don't think it can go better than that. So it's one of those fantasies. I don't know if
Yeah.
typically the mothers are the ones who have these fantasies, right? But
No, 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 no. We
the
we we
dads are
are
now,
yeah.
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 I mean, oh, the state, because of how not just the state of marriage, but the trend, the direction it's going. Oh man, like, whew, it
Yeah.
makes you, as a parent, it makes me so uneasy. I'm sure at some
Yeah.
point, Muhsinaire is going to have an episode on marriage. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
leave
yeah.
that for that.
Yeah. Yeah, inshallah. Next, well, maybe one of these days we'll invite you and your wife, and we can talk about homeschooling because we're both homeschooling families, but
Yep, yep.
we take very different approaches. So I think that'll be a
Yeah,
good conversation. Okay. All right. Back to the
inshallah.
topic at hand. Today's topic will be about faith and all around faith. So I have a few questions for you. I think about 5 questions, but let's start with question number 1 and see how that goes. So the question is, how has your faith shaped you, and how has it shaped the way you see the world and how you make decisions?
I think I like the question itself because it points at some key terms that are related. So I think you said, how has it shaped? How has my faith shaped the way I see the world and make decisions? Immediately when I hear that, the two aspects of this is seeing the world. I think from my perspective, I think of a worldview. I think of a lens, like literally seeing something and having a lens through which you filter whatever you see. Because what is there to be seen may not be what is actually seen. There's a filter that we interpret or understand things through by the time it gets to us. So that's to me is just talking about worldview.
Yeah, it's one of my
Then
favorite words, Weltashung, right? Weltashung. I don't know how
yeah,
to say that, but yeah,
Wil-
yeah. It's
Wilton or something. I think
yeah,
it's an academic unnecessary academic jargon
yeah.
using German.
Yeah, it's one of those
Yeah,
words if you hear it, you just don't forget about it. But it captures
yeah.
the meaning very
It does.
succinctly, yeah.
It does. And the second part is about making decisions. So these two are related because when you make a decision, you are putting whatever you see in a frame. You're putting it either in a hierarchy of priorities, and you are prioritizing aspects of it that other people may not. So in a sense, making decisions require frameworks. Now, whether we admit it or not, frameworks are just structures we use to think, concepts that guide how we think about something. We can have, uh, they would say, I mean, not to be too academic, but you can have prescriptive frameworks that are normative, try to get you to do things or to tell you what should be done. We have descriptive frameworks that really just tells you how something should be understood before making any decision. So, what my faith has done to me in the sense of worldview and framing or creating a framework, I think it's just that it's made me to do things differently when you take the faith seriously. So, which is, here, I'm talking about the fundamental theology or fundamental theological points, the implications of those fundamental theological points. And I'm not talking about discursive theology, speculative theology like kalam, or even those who claim they are not doing kalam and they refer to things like the tawheed, the rububiyya, uluhiyya, and all of that. No, I'm talking about something more basic, something that is very easy to pick out from the Quran, for example, and something that a lay person would have. So let's begin with, say, take the names of Allah or the attributes. So these are just ways that the Quran is very explicit about how we can know God, so that we appreciate God, we love God, and we have a framework, in a sense, to understand God, and to also to what's the word, to mimic, in a sense, without make I don't know if mimic is the right word, but if God is the most merciful, then we want to show mercy, because we want to be a reflection of God as we should be. We can go on and on, but let's take Rabb, the attribute of God, Rabb, and look at it in two ways, actually. We can look at it one way in terms of ownership and authority. So if we understand Rabb on the one hand to be ownership and authority, there's a way it has affected my life personally, or my understanding of Rabb in that way, to do things a certain way, but also the way we can understand Rabb as the nurturer or sustainer. I prefer nurturer. So now the first one, in terms of ownership and authority, here let me make a distinction between two words I'll use that may not be thorough, but I just, for this conversation, I don't want to think too much about it. So let's talk about owning something and something belonging to you. Let's assume these two words are different. So when I say to own, this is more more encapsulating. It's like it's a wider, it's a bigger version of belonging, if that makes sense. So ownership for God and belonging for humans. So let's say God, He owns everything. That's a theological position we can derive from Rabb. He's the Lord of Rabbil Alameen, Lord of all the worlds. He is the ultimate authority, and he owns everything. So when he, our Rabb, owns everything, then everything that we consider as belonging to us is actually something that is in our custody. It means when we say this house belongs to me or that car belongs to me, you kind of don't own it on a theological level. And I think we don't take that seriously enough. But when you take it seriously, then it becomes a question of how do you manage what is in your custody? Because you're going to have to account for it. You're going to have to be answerable to your Lord, your Rabb, about how you managed that, what's the word? Responsibility. Did you use it exclusively to your benefit or not? Or did you include others? And note that I'm not talking about a situation where the thing even doesn't even belong to you. So we're not even going there. We're talking about situation where something, according to the law, belongs to you and you can decide to do what you want with it.
Yeah,
So
no,
in
I
my
think
case, for example,
even in
yeah,
situations, for example, like with your body, right? Like your body parts, your organs, and how you take care of it. And even a
yeah,
situation like maybe with your children, right? Like I think this is where really taking responsibility over, not that you own them in a sense, but I mean, if anyone were to own anyone, it's like a parent and a
hmm
child. That's
hmm
like, you have full control over them, especially when they're young. They can't say no to you, basically. So that's a big
hmm
responsibility.
So so now the question is, when you take that theological point seriously, how does it affect the way you live your life? So personally, I think this understanding of my Rob has made it so easy for me to um, to give out what belongs to me in the conventional sense, because
Mhm.
you would think the more you have, the easier it would be to give charity,
No, no,
or
no.
even
Haven't
pay your
you
zakat.
haven't you heard the
Uh-huh.
saying, a rich man says, I didn't get this rich by giving away my money? So, yeah,
Yeah. So it's kind of an irony, or
yeah.
a sort of
Okay.
contradiction.
So,
So, but I'm sorry. I think just you
okay.
asked about me in particular.
Yes, yes.
I just remembered something that may even be useful, because in your in one of the Muhsinaire episodes, you mentioned how the neglected toy becomes a favorite toy when
Yes.
another child comes. So I remember just by way of example, to show you how fundamental these theological points are and how they can have implications on what you do. So I'll give you an example with my 3 to 4 year old at the time, how she would behave, how she would uh, cling on to toys, certain toys when we have guests. Like you said in a previous episode, the neglected toy becomes the favorite toy when you have guests. And I noticed that what she would say is, it's mine. And this is her justification. Like, she feels so righteous about it. Like, it's mine. This is mine. And that's why she feels she can take it and do whatever she wants with it. So therein, I kind of figured out, okay, maybe we made a little mistake in framing to her that the toys in the house belong to her. So what I did afterwards was I got her to understand that, okay, you see, none of these toys belongs to you. It belongs to you, your mom, and I. So once someone comes, even if you don't want to give them, I can give them, or your mom can give it to them. Interestingly, the conversation even went to as far as talking about God and how we don't own the things that she thinks I own, but actually it all belongs to God. And you would think it's such a complicated uh, statement or concept to explain to a 3 or 4 year old, but she was able to understand it, and she still repeats it today. When we say, um, "Oh, this belongs to God," but it also belongs to you. However, it's not really yours, right? So when we talk in contradictions like that, and this is where they say theology is where language, you see the limitations of language, but she understands it. Even if language doesn't quite capture it, she understands it. But more importantly, it was the way she changed her attitude since then. Without me giving people or the other kids that come permission to use the toys, she then just pulled back a bit. And then she now understood that it's not really hers to decide. And then she became less clingy. And then, to an extent, she started giving out her toys. At some point, we were like, no, you can't give away this toy. This is our favorite as well, to an extent.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, that's
No,
just a digression. Yeah.
no, this is it's very interesting because uh, so I have three kids, so and we live very closely together. Like it's we're all in each other's
Mm,
faces, and it's good, alhamdulillah. But what that evolved to meant that nobody really owned anything, especially for the kids.
mhm.
And so I actually,
Communism.
yeah. So I thought, I thought like it might be good actually because especially, because between my oldest and my youngest daughter, like they started, fights often. Um, the middle one, he's just everybody's friend, but the oldest and the youngest, they are very different, let's say. So, anyway, so
Mm,
I actually got them drawers. So I got them like a set of three drawers. So I'm like, okay, you can put your own stuff in here. So I wanted them just to take a little bit more accountability on particular things and okay, like just have some privacy. Just learn like the concept of
mhm,
privacy. Like this is this person's drawer. You don't just go and open it. This is that person's drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
with our room as well, they would just walk in and out. But, they're growing up and we're like, okay, no, you're older now. You can't just come into
Mm-hmm.
Mama and Baba's room. You have to knock and you can't just open our drawers. Okay, but
Mm-hmm.
my question actually to you is, this is like obviously not like a black and white, thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a spectrum. So how do you see, because, people, I understand what you explained, and, we are still just humans. So sometimes, what you're supposed to do because of the attributes of Allah, and you know what you should do, but, you don't always do the full thing. Maybe so how do you see this playing out in the real world? Like, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like capacity, sometimes you're able to do more, sometimes you're able to do less. But I'm guessing the most important thing is just to have this at the back of your mind, whether you achieve it 100% or achieve it 50%.
Yes. So definitely that's what it is. It's almost like information is not what we lack, right? We know these things. But the thing is, do we live as if it is true? It's almost like the difference between knowing about something or and knowing that something is true. So the two are kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of facts
Yeah.
we know, and but do we act as if it is true? That is the question. So what we need is less information.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much more philosophizing. Some people it tickles their minds or it serves them, but really we have so much in the basic uh attributes of God or just knowing who God is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it. If you know he is God. Indeed, he is God. Like, just take that,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Just that. I mean, it means
Yeah. Yeah.
the way you would carry yourself, and he knows everything you do, would be different. But we know it's also difficult to do that. Oh, interestingly, there's I don't know if we will get to that, but maybe this is important. I think so in Sherman Jackson, an excellent guy. For those who don't know, like really, he the way he digests and analyzes stuff from the dean, but really a good perspective. Okay, let me not go too much into that. So he made a point in an article, and he talks about the the contradiction that that meets Muslims because of liberalism. Of course, I think liberalism is something you can have an episode about later on. But what he points out to is the idea of liberal rationality. Because now what we have done or what we understand as understanding or knowing, right? These things have changed significantly since the Enlightenment or with liberalism as it evolves in modernity from Europe. So what that has meant is that people think you can become a good Muslim by knowing all the things there is to know about Islam. And he is saying, no, that has never really been the way Islam has been taught traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Like just because you know something doesn't make you a better person or a better
Mm-hmm.
Muslim.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Just
he makes the example with he said he gave an example with the basketball team. I think he talks about people who know all the rules, like they are probably so good at like ref level,
Mm-hmm.
and people who even have innate talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, just because you have the talent or the affinity or advantage in being able to be a better Muslim, still that doesn't make you a better Muslim. Who
Mm-hmm.
becomes a better Muslim is the player that comes and shows up and practices and hones their skills, and shows up every day and does it and does it and does it. Now that is what becomes a team player. And then you
Mm-hmm.
have a team that's actually formidable. As
Mm-hmm.
opposed to, he said, what we now have is, he described the Muslim Ummah as gifted. Like people are really like gifted players. Some people are gifted players, and some people know the rules, but they think they can win a match just by showing up on the weekends and just throwing some fancy hoops and even making some baskets, you know? So I think that's,
Okay.
I don't know if it answers the question you were asking.
Yeah, it does. I think
about.
it reminds me of the quote about the faith of the grandmother, I think. The iman of the
Yes.
grandmother in Islam. Like you don't know much,
Mhm.
but what you know, you are, you have conviction in, and okay. All right. So I think we'll
Yeah.
move on to question number 2, which I think we've touched on a little bit. So maybe if we can answer it fairly quickly. But is there a verse from the Qur'an or a Hadith or a principle or maybe even the names of and attributes of Allah, like you mentioned, one that you keep coming back to in your life?
The thing is, I am very cautious about using the Quran or the Hadith to make a point. Yeah, there are times when it applies, but usually I'm also suspicious when I see people take an ayah of the Quran and Hadith to make a point, because I think what we have, what we should use are the principles. I mean, it doesn't apply to everything, but that's another discussion. But usually, what you want are principles that are derived from all the, or as many ayat as you have, as many ahadith as you have, because otherwise you may come up the same point. You can use the Quran to make opposing points if you just take an ayah or a hadith. So I like I like working in principles and stories. I think stories are really powerful as long as they synthesize the hadith and the Quran and the principles as well. So in this case, however, uh, the principles, there are ayat and ahadith that actually capture a principle properly. So when people use those ahadith and ayat, they are in a sense echoing all the other ayat and ahadith that conform to that principle, but that ayah and hadith itself may not be sufficient as a principle, because unless you know that nothing else contradicts it or nothing else qualifies it. Now, that said, one of the things that comes to mind all the time is in conversations, it just comes up, and I think it's related to the point we made about the implication of living a very deliberate, mindful life with taqwa, that is, about God, as if God and his attributes and all the things we believe in are true. So the point, the ayah I come back to is the ayah that talks about, I mean, I won't quote it verbatim, but it's the ayah that talks about how when man or humans are in the sea, they invoke God for help. So when they are in a sea storm, they invoke God for help and they turn back to God. But the moment they get back on land, they feel the safety, right? While they were on the sea, in the sea,
Yeah.
they feel the precarity of life.
There's a saying,
Yeah.
there are no atheists on a sinking boat, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, at that point, you're just like, you know what? If God exists, I'll make a prayer and then he'll hear me out. So, but the Quran actually, but see, that's the funny thing, right? So when you have sayings like that, and you realize that the Quran almost said it verbatim, right? Like it's there in the Quran. Like that saying might as well have come from the Quran. That when man is on sailing on the ship and there's a sorry, not sandstorm, there's a storm, they turn back fully, wholeheartedly to God.
Okay.
But when they land, and the next verse goes, when they land, they turn away. Or I
Yes,
think it's
yes.
probably in the same verse, they turn away.
Yeah.
Then God asked a rhetorical question. Do they think it is any more difficult for us to just open the earth and let it consume them? Right? So this sense of precarity when they are on the sea, just because they can feel it, they can see, oh, things can go either way. And now they can't feel it. They think it's not there anymore. And so God is just reminding you that, no, see, from his perspective, it's all easy. It's the same thing. There's actually no difference. Like the earth can just open up and swallow you right there, just as much as a sandstorm. The only difference is you don't sense it, you
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
person. So now,
yeah,
just because you don't sense it, you shouldn't act as if you're safe.
yeah. You know, this is interesting. This is heavy because there are some places in the world where if you were just to go there and spend a few days, it's like it's not real life. Like it's just like there's so much wealth, so much affluence. People are dressed up in diamonds. People are driving Rolls Royces, and for them, this is life. This is the world. So this is for me like, just because you're not, you know, in another part of the world where there's a famine or like life is harder, basically, not even a famine, just life is just much harder and more real. That doesn't mean that, but that's kind of how humans are, right? Like you're just immersed in whatever environment you find yourself. So for me, the takeaway from that is just you have to be deliberate about where you put yourself, where is your
Yeah.
environment, because it has a big effect on you.
And it's perhaps why. So the idea that you want to thank God and you want to seek God's help when things are well compared to
Hmm.
when things go bad. Like
Yes,
that's
yes,
that's fundamental in the doctrine, right? It's
yes.
the same Islam that says being rich, for example, or wealthy is not really an advantage. It's just a different test.
Hmm.
So you're being tested differently. So don't
Yes,
take your eyes off the ball and be
yes.
like, well, things are
But
easy for me.
but
No, no,
have
no, no. That
you have
itself is a
you
test.
have you seen the memes where people are like, okay, yeah, Allah, you've tested me enough with poverty. Now can you please test me with wealth? Let me see how I
Oh no,
perform.
definitely, definitely. I mean,
So
I'm on that boat, right?
yeah, yeah.
Because
So let's have that test with
some
wealth.
tests,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And by the way,
Okay.
on a lighter note, it just occurred to me now that if you fly locally in Nigeria,
Mm-hmm.
and Nigeria is mostly Muslims and Christians, right?
Yes.
So it's funny. I don't know if this is taking a shot at Christians, but yeah, I'll just say it out anyways. My misunderstanding, perhaps, maybe a Christian can correct me. But what I see is before the flight. So now this is on the cusp of precarity. Your
Mm-hmm.
life is just about to get more precarious. I guess that's probably even a better analogy or a better way for us to understand that ayah in terms of being on flight as opposed to being on ship,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
When we understand it. But what I see is that it seems the Muslims pray while you're on the ground.
Yes.
Muslims would pray
Mm-hmm.
for the flights while they're on the ground, probably even as they were leaving their homes.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't notice whether the Christians pray, but you see, the when you start hitting turbulence, oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, you will hear prayers. You hear people who are very vocal and
Mm-hmm.
they deny the devil on that, right? I mean, because of some of their theology.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of I think it's telling, if anything. I don't know. Maybe that's something
Mm-hmm.
to look into. Yeah.
Okay. All right, mashallah. Good. All right, so we'll move on to the next question now, and this is what's the one thing in your faith that has evolved the most over time as you have grown, started a family and so on? Is there one thing that, you can point to say, yeah, I used to be like this, but now I'm a little more like that?
Okay, maybe not the family aspect, since we're probably going to discuss that. So, personally, I think what I have struggled with is the idea of mercy and forgiveness. I had my modern rational sense just can't accept that surely there are things you can do, and I mean things that are against the rights of God. not the rights of humans, right? Because we know if you sin or you violate the rights of humans, then it may not be sufficient. I say may not because that's also a little controversial. It may not be sufficient to just seek God's forgiveness. You need to get the person you've wronged or to also forgive you. So let's even take that. But I think I had struggled with the idea that you can just do whatever and then come back and ask for forgiveness and then you're forgiven. It just seems to me like a way you can kind of uh, uh, like play the game of
Mm-hmm.
salvation, if that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can just rig it. So
Mm-hmm.
it's never really settled with me.
Mm-hmm.
I struggled with it over the years, and I would, in my thinking, there would be some things that I would feel I couldn't even ask God for forgiveness for because I knew what I was doing at the time. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like I knew I was about to do something wrong. Yet I did it, and then
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, come on, like this is like how dare you? Like how dare I go back to God and then say,
Mm-hmm.
forgive me for this when I knew I was about to do something
Mm-hmm.
wrong. So that was how I understood it. But over time, I mean, I've done some readings, I've looked into things, and I come back to the idea that when you know God, again, one of the things I emphasize in when you're knowing God, and I guess we might explore this in the either homeschooling or family thing, is to really know God so that when you do things intuitively, you do it knowing God. And one way to do it is through the Hadith Qudsi that talks about God. When God says at the point of creation, like when
Mm-hmm.
he decreed the creation, he then pledged to himself, right? And that his mercy prevails over his wrath. Now
Mm-hmm.
that is just so powerful. And you try to, you're just like, no, but surely I deserve punishment for this. I deserve, obviously we deserve it, but it's not about deserving. It's not, it's now beyond you and your deeds
Mm-hmm.
cannot save you. It's God's grace that would save you ultimately. So yes,
Mm-hmm.
you may deserve it, but it doesn't mean God would actually do it. And God asks you to seek for forgiveness because seeking for forgiveness, tawbah, is turning towards God.
Mm-hmm.
And we are an insan. We forget. We forget
Mm-hmm.
all the time. We get distracted. We are always there and there. But how often do you go back to when you turn back to
Mm-hmm.
God? So that has been I think my evolution. And in doing that, now I fully accept that yes, you can do whatever wrong, especially if it is between you and God, and you can be forgiven. And it's a very,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's even
Yeah, no, no.
something
I think
what people struggle with.
it's a
Yeah,
classic. I think it's a bit of a classic one because when you're younger, you're overzealous. The rules are more black and white, and as you grow, wisdom and experiences, and you kind of understand things that are more nuanced. And so I think
yeah.
it's gonna be
And
something
the
to
other
come.
thing that complicated, I think, it's the fiqh discussions around it. Even though I'm not sure it's really, yeah, I guess it's maybe partly a fiqh issue problem. So you would have many ulama in the past that would say there are like conditions for forgiveness, right? So they would say, because even to them, you want to control people. You don't want them to feel like I can just, no, I mean, not control people in that sense. You want people to be more reasonable because it's almost like you don't trust people. I feel like I wouldn't trust many people to say, well, you can do this, but you can be forgiven. It feels like they can just misunderstand it, right? So people feel the need to go the extra mile to do all these things. Of course, what the conditions for forgiveness that they lay out are also supported strongly by the Quran and the Sunnah. And then, but they don't all have the same conditions, right? The conditions are kind of like, okay, you must decide, you must be sincere that it won't happen again, and this and this and that. But actually, we kind of don't really know these things. These are things we can't verify, like whether you're sincere or not, right? Only God can. We can think that maybe we think you're not sincere. I mean, for our own judgments and our own decision making, if we interact with you, I can clearly say, no, this person is not sincere, right? For my own decisions, but really, ultimately, only God knows. So we have the story of the parable of the man who in who would would commit sins. I think he would go to the whorehouse and or maybe the drink all night and then come back and then cry um, all night for the wrong things or the sins he's committed, and then repeat that tomorrow, right? Now, if I were witnessing someone like that, I would definitely come to the conclusion that this person is not sincere. But based on that story, that person actually gets favor with God for
Yes.
their sincerity. So we
Yes.
have to distinguish that
Yes.
just because we shouldn't give people a pass and say, oh, he may be sincere. I don't think that's practical. We're human beings, we're not God, we don't have access to that information. We make do with what we can kind of reasonably defend. So if you seem to be acting insincere, yeah, just deal with the person as if they're acting insincere, but with caution. But it's just this, it's so powerful having listened to all of this, having tried to understand this Hadith Qudsi, and then I even went to read the book by, or rather, a translation of the book by Ibn Ata'illah, which is the Hikam of Ibn Ata'illah, written by Sheikh Professor Jasser Auda, which is, I think, A Journey to God. So I wanted to understand what, in a related concept, actually, the idea of istighfar, right? That's another topic entirely I think we can have. But just for this point, to this point, the idea of istighfar, because the Prophet himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was always making istighfar, right? And you're like, okay, so, but this istighfar is literally asking for forgiveness. So forgiveness for what? From what? And then this and this and that. Then how can this thing that you do, even you when you haven't committed a sin, become something that absolves you to an extent when you commit a sin? Then perhaps the point is that it's not really what absolves you. It's a deep discussion. So I went into it and I came out of that book with this conclusion that, okay, just chill, whatever your opinions are.
Yeah.
God forgives.
So I think
Like, if God forgives.
on this point, I think one thing that I have thought about quite a bit is, as generally, like, you have kids and, kids would grow up. There's a particular, archetypes of kids. There's the good kid, there's the smart kid, there's the, the kid that's always in trouble, or the kid that's always failing, or God forbid, even the kid that, is involved with drugs or, crime and things like that. So, you know, your mind kind of develops based on, it's definitely affected by where you are in society in these categories. So I think for
Yep.
you, definitely, well, I mean, you had your episodes, but for the most part, I think you grew up as, like, quote unquote, a good kid, right? So I'm sure, you saw what the bad kids were doing, and sometimes you couldn't make sense of it sometimes. So I think that definitely plays a part in kind of your mindset, I guess. But okay. Yes.
Two things actually. The first is this, what we just talked about, forgiveness has something to do with salvation, which if there was time, I would have talked about it when you mentioned things you take seriously. So salvation is like a big thing where we also just squabble about how it is, because somehow like some people are so uncomfortable just to think that how can someone like that get saved, when I put in all the work or stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
And
exactly.
when you go deep into it, you may just realize it's just your own insecurities,
Yeah.
right? Rather than, because God can,
Mhm.
even those who say but God Himself says this person will not be saved. But then again, you're just cherry picking. You can now take other parts of the Quran that also where God also says, okay, that's the first point. The second one is on this point about sins, but it's to do with a film that has become quite popular now. So I'm talking about this because the audience may know about it. It's K-pop Demon Hunters. Have you watched it?
No, not yet, but I am aware of it. Yes.
Okay, so I saw it on Netflix. It came up, and you and I were big anime fans, right?
Yes.
So we watch animes until today, and we should have another episode on animes. We should have
Okay.
another episode on animes and maybe how it relates to child upbringing, because now I'm seeing like angles how
Oh,
kids
yes. Yes, absolutely. Yes.
my
Yes.
daughter I think accidentally started watching Naruto,
Oh,
and then
no.
now we talk about Naruto, and there's so many ways you can do like character building, I think, using Naruto and Avatar,
Yes,
and
there
the Last
are,
Airbender and stuff.
but
But
then like especially I think of Naruto, for example. When I thought about it for my son, and I was like, oof, there's some questionable things in there, actually.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. No,
but
we should discuss it another time.
yeah,
So
sure.
now there's this thing that she came up with, and she was talking about K-pop Demon Hunters, and I had seen the thumbnail on Netflix suggesting it to me. So at the time I even thought it was a series, and I was just like, nah, I don't think I'm going to go into this. But then I eventually last night, yes, we watched it, my wife and I, and this was after a review by this guy you and I follow, the Critical Drinker.
Hmm.
He did a review of K-pop, and after his review, like 10 minutes review on YouTube, I realized, oh, okay, so it seems like it's not what I thought it is. It basically has elements that we kind of would like. It's my wife now mostly watches like K-drama or likes K-drama because she's kind of fed up with Hollywood. So there's elements of K-drama in there. There's anime stuff, and the animation is quite nice. So we decided to watch it anyway because our daughter is all about it, and we told her that we are undecided about it, but we're cautious about it. So she's not allowed to watch it yet, but she probably won't be. But yeah. So one of the things I remember is that in the way people are having discussions about it, because we know that people are saying it's bad, for different reasons. The name is K-pop Demon Hunters.
Yeah,
Most people
that's a
hear
bombshell
the demon
already.
part.
K-pop and
Yeah.
Demon Hunters.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that most people seem to be worried about the demon, about it, the demon part. Like it seems that's what people kind of think, what signals to people that it's something wrong. But my wife and I, the thing that actually stood out to us, especially, is actually that it's the K-pop part, right? Because I know, like the K-pop part is like the insidious cultural thing that I was
Hmm.
like, just like, okay, how like K-pop? I don't think that's healthy at all.
Hmm.
So, but one of the points that parents have made in my wife's other groups, she said, is that the idea that in the lyrics in one of the songs, it talks about what the parents just say is actually, I'm the only one who love you, who love your sins. And they heard that and they're
Hmm.
just like, no, no way. Like my kids are not
Oh,
going to. So
wow.
it's almost feels like the flip side of what we're talking about forgiveness. It's almost
Hmm.
like, yeah, just show your sins and you'll be
Yeah.
accepted and stuff like that. But you
Yes.
see, now this brings me back to that point about context, where you take one line and then the whole thing just changes. Again, even with the title. So people see demons and they're like, oh, it's going to be demonic. They're going to be demons. No, but this is demon hunters. Like these are demon hunters completely negate demons, if that makes sense. Like it's supposed to be someone who finds and extinguishes demons, if anything. Now, in this case, the full lyrics is actually um, more than power, more than gold. You gave me your heart. Now I'm here for your soul. I'm the only one who love your sins. Feel the way my voice gets underneath your skin. I had to look it up. I
Hmm.
didn't remember it from the film. But But this is coming from a song from the bad guys, basically. So the bad guys are
Yes,
the
yes.
ones saying, "I'll love you for your sins," right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's I think,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
somehow it just reminded me that
yeah.
this talk about like this
Yeah, no,
almost
it's
opposing
actually, yeah,
view
it's
where you
actually
embrace
the,
your
yeah,
sins.
it's actually the opposite. It's
It's the
basically
opposite.
telling you
Yeah,
like,
it's the
yeah,
opposite.
the dark side will love you for your sins because,
Yeah,
uh, most of the
yeah,
time it feels good to do the sin, right? So,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Well, I wonder what first impressions will be because you're painting a very complex picture here. So we started out,
Mhm.
one side, now you're talking about K-pop demon hunters, and okay, it sounds like a very interesting family. So, okay. All right, next
No, but you and
question.
I, this is
Well,
how our
no, no,
discussions
I'm
typically go,
not
right?
being,
It's almost
well,
always.
yeah, yes, yes, but I'm not the one being interviewed today. So, okay. All right. Next question is about how you personally balance being an intellectual and being spiritual. So you can take this how you want, but I think
Mm,
one of the common things you hear these days is the intellectual argument against religion, or maybe we
hmm
should call it the pseudo intellectual argument, because I think, and obviously we think as Muslims, that
mm,
it's pseudo intellectualism. They're just, if they were
mm.
to dig deep enough, there's nothing, Islam encourages intellectual pursuit and so on. So what are your thoughts around
Yeah.
this?
I think like you can tackle it from like the perspective of liberalism or evolution theory, new atheism, critical thinking. These are all like episodes on their own, I think. But since I started talking about liberalism, I think, and
Yes.
with regards to Sherman Jackson, maybe I'll just tie it up here.
Yes.
So generally, I think there are instances where you can call it pseudo intellectual or pseudo rational and um, all of that. But I think it's not always the case, because when you do that, it's almost like you're saying they are not being thorough about the way they think, or they are being dishonest. And being that dishonesty, in a sense, they are covering what they know to be true. And literally, that's what kufr is. You know something to be true, and you cover it up. I think there are situations where it would be pseudo intellectual, and definitely you see them, sloppy arguments that are just, yeah. But there are situations where we need to understand that we're not even talking about the same things. Fundamentally, we are coming from different epistemologies, and this is where worldview comes in again. You have your ontology, and part of what makes an ontology is basically the hierarchy of things, the way what exists and what should be, what is on a higher level of existence, if that makes sense. But it affects how or what we give weight to when we think. It shapes our worldview, but it also shapes what we consider to be reasoning. Now, if you were to look at the Quran and understand, every time it says ulul albab, talks about the ulul albab, the aqal la yaqilun, it's not talking about reasoning in the way we talk about it today, in a liberal or post-liberal or even post-modern world that we live in today. So it's not really talking about the same thing. So when we come and we say, oh, the Quran makes rational arguments, and you guys are being irrational, or it makes reasonable arguments and you guys are, it may not actually be the case, because both of you may be talking about completely different, or referring to this completely different standards of reasoning, which is to say, someone can come to the conclusion that Islam is unreasonable and they can be correct, or the statement can be true.
Mhm.
um, but the question is then, what informs what they mean by rationality? So if someone says, well, because let's talk about, let's say science and religion, another episode, Abdul.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when someone says, oh, sorry, by the way, I think I'm creeping into the Muhsinaire boundaries. I don't even
No,
know
it's
what
okay.
is
It's okay.
just yeah.
Go
But
ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So when someone says, for example, science, according to science, we can't prove that God exists. That's fine, right? Like that's literally fine because the tools of science and what is considered an argument or the logic of science, which is empirical, it's fine. It's supposed to be either some form of deductive reasoning or inferential reasoning and the likes. So when you say God cannot be proved in science, yeah, it's fine because it means no tool. We don't have a God meter or a microscope or a telescope that can prove to us or measure that God exists or this pattern of signals shows that God exists. Now, we can't do it directly. You can make other arguments,
No,
but
understood.
you may
Understood.
not be able to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's fine. But so again, it's just there's a lot of that, right?
Hmm.
So when you become comfortable in your own version of reason, I think someone has written a book. We can share in the show notes.
Hmm.
It's a free PDF. I think it's Ibrahim Kalin, a Turkish philosopher. I
Hmm.
think he wrote Reasoning in the Quran or the Quran and Rationality. It's a short
Hmm.
book about less than 100 pages, but very digestible. He talks about how the Quran understands reason, and it is in those terms when Muslims say that Islam or the Quran based is appeals to reason and appeals to arguments and stuff, that's when you
Hmm.
can fully understand it. But if you subject it to the standards of today or the dominant standards today, which is largely informed by the Enlightenment and liberalism and the likes,
Hmm.
you are going to end up seeming dishonest to people
Hmm.
who are on the other side, don't even understand the Quranic side of it.
Hmm.
So it's at the end of the day, it's not really a threat. It shouldn't be, but because it
Okay,
causes a
so
lot of trouble,
I think maybe
we should sort it out for people.
yeah, what I would like to maybe talk about briefly on this is obviously you can go deep into it, right? As you mentioned, like Sherman Jackson.
Mm,
I like Imam Tom Fakine. He's really good with this type of
mm,
discussion, but that's like quite deep. It's even
mhm,
like for me, I tune out even sometimes because like, okay, fine, he's talking about some Foucault or, some
mhm,
French philosopher. I'm like, okay, yeah, fine. I don't really
mhm,
care. But
mm,
but if you boil it down, these days, like
mhm,
these philosophies and these worldviews are being fed in bite-sized pieces to people, like in
mhm,
social media,
mhm,
in Hollywood, things like that. So, I have personally seen one person,
mhm,
maybe two, grew up in a Muslim family,
mhm,
and these ideas basically now they start to basically take them away from Islam. Let's put it that way. And if you
mhm,
look at the world today, right? From a cursory glance, it does look like,
mhm,
yes, all the Muslim countries, all the Muslims in the world and their countries, they're running horribly. They don't care about human rights, a lot of corruption. But if you look at the
mhm,
West, you know, again, cursory glance, there's people have dignity there. Life is good. You can make it. Nobody's going to persecute you for how you live your life. So,
mhm,
yeah, and you could make the argument like actually, just based on what works, like today, what works is the liberal argument. And of course, we're being bombarded with this again and again over social media. So
mhm,
how would you advise, someone in that situation, or if you know somebody in that situation, because they're not interested in the long form debates of liberalism and the history
mhm,
of liberalism and are we arguing about the same thing or not? No, no, they don't care about all that. All they see is today, how the world is, what they're being told, and the fact that if they look around, all the Muslim countries are in a horrible state, whereas all the European and American countries are in a good state. So what do you think about that?
Okay, so I think I would say I would start from you can give them a very simple answer, like you said, but I think we ultimately we have to deal with the complicated answer. So it's almost like I think it's Ibn Taymiyyah and who talks about how the purpose of debates, like yeah, debates don't really do anything. It's just rhetoric for the most part, but you do it anyway. You do it because some people are only going to hear that part of the debate, and that's all they're going to carry away from the debate. So you engage with it. So on that, you can point out to people that when we talk about, just take it to the basics, or let me put it the argument this way. The first argument is that the Quran is not meant for intellectuals only. It's meant for everyone, right? Now, if it is meant for everyone, then it also needs to reason on a level that everyone can understand. Now, if I tell you that, we take a simple argument from the Quran that says, "Do you think we created you in jest or in without any purpose?" Obviously, no one just creates anything for nothing, right? So now that on a reason level is actually a very strong argument that you don't have to be an intellectual. Everyone understands fundamentally that when you sit down to design something that looks very purposeful, you have to have a purpose for it. You can't just do it for even when you say it's a hobby, it's really that hobby is itself the purpose. So so that is an argument. But now some people would say, well, that is not a good argument, because a good argument should have like an axiom, a proposition, and it should follow this and this, and it should be logical, right? They might come up with that and be like,
Yes.
oh no, this is how you should structure an argument. And at that point, you're like, aha, so you want to go deep, right? Now you're going deep already. Now, if you want to go deep, then we can now take that apart and tell and show you what you are proposing as an argument, or a deductive or inferential argument, is actually maybe just a version of some Aristotelian syllogism, right? That you don't even need, that has been shown to be weak in some instances and strong in some instances. So you pull out then you have the stronger debates. To your question about when we take a look and we see how the Muslim world is doing poorly and compared to the West, and then use that to kind of say, oh, Muslims are backwards and stuff. To that, I'll say no, they're not doing anything Islamic necessarily. It's like a bootleg version of the West. That's all Muslim countries are now. They're just trying to be the West, and they're failing at it, right? And when they fail at it, they cosmetically add the Islamic terms, and they do this and that, because modernity has changed. In fact, the whole idea of a nation state was, we didn't have much say in it. So the question is then, how do we navigate that and eventually change things? We need to now engage in that, do it to the best that we can, given our own frame of reference, then eventually change what a nation state should be, so that we influence what it is going future. Because as Muslims, we're supposed to be contributors. We're not just consumers. We're supposed to also contribute to these things. So I don't think you can escape the deep discussions, but you can easily engage them to show them that, well, we can leave it as a simple discussion, or we can take it further. And when we're taking it further, then be ready. We're not going to be bounded simply by what you think you know. We're going to look into, critique what you think you know, then also do critique what we know, and then see which one is actually better, which one actually makes the most sense. But if you don't want to do that, then you are just being dishonest. You're not being a good sport. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's actually easy to just lift the veil on, these Western countries and show their hypocrisy too, right? It's like they do a good job of hiding it, but once you just lift it a little bit, you start to see, oh, it's all the same. But I can't believe you used Aristotelian syllogism on this podcast.
Oh,
Mariam will
sorry.
not forgive me for that one. You are really trying hard because Mariam could not make it for this podcast. You're really taking it in a different direction. Okay. All right. Mashallah.
You can edit. You can edit.
No, I'm not going to edit that out. All right. Okay. All right. People will see what I deal with on a weekly basis. So all right. Okay. Final question, and maybe we can try and keep this one brief because we're already over an hour. as Muslims living in the world today, what do you think we often overlook when it comes to practicing faith with ihsan? Now, I think we may have answered this actually, but yeah, I'll give
Mhm.
you a chance if you want to maybe take it a different direction.
Okay. So I think, yeah, definitely. What was the word you used? You said practicing Islam mindfully. What was the word you said with
Practicing faith with ihsan. Muhsinaire is all about ihsan.
no,
So,
no, no. I know the question, but I
oh,
think you mentioned something earlier. You said practicing Islam mindfully, or yeah. So it's a. I think that's really what we need to to really understand the implication of the fundamental points of our theology, to understand God. Because when you understand God, it's like the sayings of Rabiat al-Adawiyya, when she said, if she made the controversial prayer, that if I worship you for the benefits, I think, for the rewards, then throw me in hellfire. But if I
mm-hmm,
worship you because I love you, or
mm-hmm,
because you deserve it, sorry, I'm paraphrasing,
mm-hmm,
then like just listen to me, or it's basically her saying we
yes,
shouldn't worship God
mm-hmm,
out of fear. We
mm-hmm,
should worship God out of love and reverence. Like
mm-hmm,
but the thing is, you need to understand God,
mm-hmm,
and it
yes,
doesn't
yes,
take the Ash'ari theology or Mu'tazila, all that kalam. You don't need that. It's just understand the basic
mm-hmm,
attributes of Allah Himself that He
okay,
mentioned in the Quran. So
yes,
when you do that, then it goes a long way. However, maybe I think I should talk about a barrier that I notice. So one of the things I think it's a common thing that I see as a barrier for many people is this like there's a whole dimension of Islam that is missing, right? So it's with you hear me rant about it all the time, so I won't mention names. And of course, this is a very inclusive podcast. So, but there are strands of Islam that focus on the Islam and they forget the ihsan. When you go back to the hadith, right?
mm-hmm,
The Islam, Iman, and
mm-hmm,
ihsan,
mm-hmm,
they kind of double down on the Islam and maybe even the Iman, but they just completely they don't act, because really, Ihsan is really acting
mm-hmm,
with that implication as if
yes,
God
yes,
really exists, right? That's another
yes,
way to put it.
as if he
So,
sees you, right?
so they're like strands, and it's to no fault of people, because you grow up knowing what you know, what you've been taught. That's all you know, right?
Mm-hmm,
Uh, and some of us have been raised in a way that we think what you want is to make sure, or it stops at making sure, for example, you say Bismillah before you slaughter an animal, but and maybe even treat it well before you slaughter it, like give it water, and maybe even though people don't really do this much these days, maybe even take it away from uh, rather no, do not to slaughter others in front of others animals.
mm-hmm,
Maybe you do all of that, but then they forget that in taking care, in rearing the animal itself, like all the days you've had the animal, that animal should have been treated properly, like in good conditions, right? Now that is
mm-hmm,
ihsan,
mm-hmm,
because just because you don't do that, it won't be called it. The food
mm-hmm,
won't be said to be haram.
yes, yes,
It
yes,
would be halal. But that's why you have halal and tayyiba. Like
mm-hmm,
there's always something extra. So
mm-hmm,
that ihsan, it's almost like out of range for people. And another important thing for ihsan, I think, another barrier is also the idea that this concept that in tasawwuf is it's almost very fundamental in tasawwuf, but outside of tasawwuf, people don't talk about it, and then it comes out all the time, which is the idea of the ego, how you deal with the ego. Like people think, oh, I just need to do my salah, I need to do this and that, but uh, I need to do my five pillars, make sure I do them, and then I'm good. But with tasawwuf, good is not good enough. You don't want to be just good, that idea cannot even it's not even understood within the tasawwuf circles. Like good, why would you just want to be good? It doesn't even make sense. You want to excel, you want to reach ihsan. That is always the goal. So So I think it's to do with the way we are taught things. I think that kind of takes out the idea of having ihsan in everything we do, and even improving our character. It's almost like you can have people who are very religious, as we say, in the sense that they do all their rituals, they do their salah on time, but they're horrible people in terms of character. Right? And that is the ihsan aspect. So
Yes.
if we don't teach that and show that when you actually connect with God, which is what salah is, you're connecting with God. When you do it often, when you reflect, when you do all the nawafils you do, and because some of these people, they do a lot of nafila, right? You do all of that. The point is, at the end of the day, it's supposed to show, there has to be a link. They're not disconnected. It's a whole thing. And they are a pillar for a reason, or they are pillars of Islam for a reason. Because what do pillars do? They support something. The pillars are not the building, right? They're supposed to support something. And that something is all the other things, the ihsan, because the ihsan cannot exist without the pillars. So I think it's in our teaching, in our learning and stuff. This is my thinking anyway.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's great. Maybe one thing I just want to say before we move on is the saying of Rabiatul Adawiyya, like that is next level. That is like an extreme position. So
Gives me
that's
shivers
not
every time.
that's not what we are advocating for, even though it's excellent. But like we're not saying everybody has to be like that. But I mean, there's the
Yeah.
saying, right? Between fear and hope. Like that's the middle ground. Like everything in Islam is about trying to just hit the middle ground. So if you can be between fear and hope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then yeah, I think that's a good place to be, right? And then if you want to
Mm,
strive for that excellence of people like that, and that's also, of course, welcome. Okay. Um,
mm,
so we could have a whole another episode about this and ihsan and how it shows up. And this is one of the reasons we started the podcast and the newsletter and the whole brand actually, because like
mm,
whenever you talk about like, okay, living with ihsan and Muslims living with ihsan and doing their best and striving for excellence, it's always about examples of the past, the past, the past, the past.
mm,
For young
mm,
people, I just feel like it lands weird when everything you're telling them to try and be is the past. It's like, okay, what about
mm,
now? What about today? Is it possible to do that
mhm,
today? How does that look like
mhm.
if I were to try and do that today? So we're hoping that we'll be able to explore a lot of that moving forward. Okay.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, inshallah. All right, so we'll wrap up now
Mm,
with maybe just one last more, lighter question. And that is if you could give yourself advice from 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe we're not that old, so let's say 15 years ago. Um,
we are.
let's say 10 years ago. We're not that old.
Okay.
So at least let's say I
10
was
years
trying
ago, I was married 10 years ago.
to really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Okay, so
You've
let's
been
say
married for like 13 or
no, no, no,
12 or something.
don't expose me. That's okay. Let's say 15 years ago, okay? Before you were
Okay.
married, like you were
Yeah,
still young and you could have gone in a bunch of different directions. So 15 years ago, if
yeah.
you were to give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I actually can't imagine anything. You know why? Maybe, maybe I
Mhm,
can explain why it's
mhm,
difficult, because I think I have taken the idea of Rab very seriously, in the sense that I feel like everything I've done has been
mhm,
guided. I've been like, it's like God has been holding my hands and kind of
mhm,
putting me here and there. So it's
mhm,
almost like when I look back, I a lot of the experiences that maybe, or blind spots that I've had at some points, I feel like it was useful for me to have them, because then I
mhm.
corrected it, or then I'm putting effort towards something. So
Okay,
right
okay. So
now,
so let's
oof,
flip it.
yeah,
Let's flip
I
it.
can't think of. Okay, yeah,
You
good.
have a friend who is
Yeah.
15 years younger than you. What do you tell them?
Yeah. So 15 years younger than me. Can we say 20? Because I think 15 years ago I was still I had finished my
Sure, sure,
undergraduate.
sure, sure.
Yeah. So I would say, if you have not finished your undergraduate, I would
Hmm.
say go get into the humanities. Do some form
Hmm.
of humanities before you do any of the professional
Hmm.
um and if you are like dead serious on going into the technical or the sciences, or STEM in general, I would say go for the broader things, which to an extent you did, I think, but
Yes,
I had
yes.
to like do it on my own separately. Go into like physics or math, like do one of those, then do any other engineering or whatever, because those are just, there's really good, they have very palpable philosophical dimensions to them. Whereas when you go into engineering directly, you go into what else? Engineering, medicine, you're just a tool for the most part. Like all the thinking has been done for you. You're asked to make designs, and the designs can be original, but the philosophy behind it is kind of missing. Whereas in physics, you have to deal with the philosophy. In math, you have to deal with the philosophy, like the framing, the worldview things all come up. In engineering, it's all been done for you. You're just applying the knowledge from physics and by the way, chemistry and biology are just physics, but that's another debate.
Yeah, yeah. And then you can always just do a year or two of you know,
Yeah,
master's degree or whatever, and then, you're good, if you want to
yeah.
specialize. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
and don't be in a
We
rush. Don't be in a rush time wise, because when we finished, because we were in the same secondary
yes,
school and we
yes, yes,
finished.
yes.
Remember,
Yeah.
we had a whole year because
Yes.
the Nigerian
Yes.
universities were on strike
Yeah.
for like 11 months, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I have that I mean, I grew up so much in that period, just being at home. Like, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize I grew up so much until I went back. I went back to school to the uni, and I was just like, I'm so mature now. Like things that would have triggered me in the past, I would
Mm-hmm.
have been caught in a fight or something. It just didn't bother me anymore, right? So I think
Especially
don't
for
be in a
boys,
rush.
right? Especially for boys. Just take
Oh,
it a little
yes,
slow.
definitely.
Yeah.
So don't ever, but maybe this is related to like the homeschooling
Mm-hmm.
discussions we'll have. Like, don't be in a rush. You and I, for example, we've always been like the youngest in the class,
Yeah.
right? We've always been, in a sense, rushed because we were
Mm-hmm.
doing okay academically. So we left in primary five and stuff like that. I would say, don't rush. Take your time, take some years off, like gap year, do something, enrich your life, go back,
Mm-hmm.
that's probably an advice I would give. Thank you for
Okay.
bringing that out from me because I didn't think I
Yeah,
would
no, no,
even
no
have
problem.
any
Yeah.
advice.
Okay. Yeah, a lot of these we talk about in just the Muhsinaire brand in general. So when you talked about the humanities, like we have more than enough doctors and lawyers and engineers, right? Like, but we don't
Mhm.
a lot of the humanities, the softer skills, and these are the things that end up influencing, you know,
Everything,
everything. Yeah,
everything,
yeah.
it's
So and
everything.
and these days it's a battle of attention. We've moved away from physical battles for the most part, alhamdulillah. I mean, except for what's happening, in
Mm,
Palestine. May Allah give them victory
mm,
and shifa and all that. But
um,
globally, it's more around control, attention, soft powers. So we really need to build our Islamic community capital on those things
yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Not just soft power, actually, power itself, right? But that's
Yeah,
another
yeah, yeah,
discussion.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, we actually do have quite a bit of power and money, but we just don't channel it in the right ways, I think.
we don't
But anyway,
exercise it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make sure to try and get all the references that Bilal talked about. We'll put them in the show notes,
Mm,
and hopefully the listeners enjoyed this longer form discussion. We will be back with episodes 2 and 3. Episode 2, inshallah, will focus on family, and episode 3, we will focus on impact. So thanks so much, Bilal. If
yeah,
you have
Allah.
any thing to share, like did you write books or you have a social media channel or videos you want, I will include them in the show notes as well.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All
And
right.
looking forward to the next
All right. No, thank you so
episode,
much.
inshallah.
All right. MashaAllah.
Okay,
Assalamu
assalamu
alaikum.
alaikum.
Okay.
From our family to yours, thank you for being here. This journey of ihsan is not one that we can take alone. So let's keep learning together, inshallah. If you enjoyed the podcast, please give it a rating and share it with your friends and family and anyone you know who might be interested.
Subscribe to the podcast. Join us at muhsinaire.com to continue the conversation. Until then, may your days be full of barakah. Assalamu alaikum.